Chapter 98. Great King, it's a cat. The rats were all shocked. They all wanted to flee into the ground in a panic. The cat-eating rat king had finally found the cat he was looking for. After careful consideration, he came to the conclusion that a regular cat could eat regular rats, so a demon general cat could obviously eat demon general rats. Afterwards, his legs weakened. He said calmly, "Move. Wise be the great king." The rats said. They immediately dug a hole. As a result, a large group of rat demons arrived aggressively. As soon as they saw the cat Xianxia, they immediately fled in a panic. Xianxia let out another great burst of laughter. Xianxia was stunned. How cowardly! The terrifying suction force of the quicksand immediately vanished, and he leapt out of the sandpit. Xianxia's expression changed. "We've been exposed. Let's go." Xianxia suddenly looked back. A streak of light shot over from the distant horizon to the south. He only glanced at it from afar, but the sharp aura seemed to pierce his eyes. He dared not stay any longer. He charged towards the ice-sword cliff. The landscape receded madly. Originally, Xianxia felt like he was as fast as the wind, but every time he looked back, the streak of light would get closer. It was within 50 kilometers of him in just a while. Xianxia said to Xianxia, "We can't continue like this. You should go first." Xianxia said, "What are you talking about? We're almost there." Xianxia said, "If we continue like this, we'll be caught. You should go to the Dragon Province yourself." Xianxia glanced at Xianxia and nodded firmly. Then, "Big Blacko, be careful. Don't get killed." In the next moment, she vanished. Who knew where she had moved off to? Xianxia immediately concealed his aura and changed directions. He ran towards the east. He did not have any intention of sacrificing himself for the greater good. Sword immortals were very powerful. The strength of the sword immortal did not exist at all. If he were caught, the sword immortal would probably kill him after killing Xianxia. He would be purged as well. Was he supposed to tell the sword immortal that he was actually a human at a time like this? As a result, he could only let Xianxia flee first. It was very likely for the sword immortal to choose to hunt down Xianxia first, and he could use the spirit turtle's method of sea suppression to conceal his aura. Perhaps Xianxia could escape this calamity, and Xianxia would not have to be implicated by him. This was the best choice for both of them. Husband and wife are birds of the same forest. When disaster strikes, they fly separately. As for whether they live or die, they can only pray for their own good and leave their fates to fate. Xianxia inexplicably had such a thought. The soaring dragon elder had originally been patrolling the skies when he was suddenly alerted by the disturbance at Black Rat Mountain. However, within Infinite Boundless Mountain, it was not uncommon for demonic beasts to kill each other. He didn't really care about it. Demon General. A powerful demonic aura that only a demon general could have surged forth. Only then did he notice it, and he focused his senses. A moment later, an even more powerful demonic aura rose into the sky. He immediately reacted and chased after it on his sword. Battles between demonic beasts were rather common, but battles between demon generals were extremely rare. This was because demon generals that had undergone the first heavenly tribulation all possessed a certain level of intelligence. They were nominally under the command of the same demon king and were led by various demon commanders. They would not fight each other for no good reason. If nothing went wrong, the cat demon he was looking for was right there. Sure enough, he locked onto the demon chi from several hundred kilometers away, and on the other side was the strange demon he had seen once before. He could not help but feel irritated that he had almost been tricked. Originally, he thought the cat demon would move about carefully alone. He never thought it would have a helper. It was no wonder that he had failed to find it after so many days. The streak of light rapidly drew closer. Suddenly, the cat demon vanished from the smaller demon's shoulder, while the smaller demon ran off towards the east. The soaring dragon elder hesitated. He ignored Xianxia and continued towards the ice-sword cliff. He had to stop the cat demon from leaving the Green Province. Once it reached the Dragon Province, it would be troublesome. When the sword-like gaze swept past Xianxia, he felt like all the blood in his body had stopped flowing. Only when the streak of light shot off towards the north did he ease up. He ran for another 5 kilometers and arrived in a deep valley. He dove in and hid under a cliff, concealing all of his demon chi. He exhaled deeply. He had finally dodged a bullet. Li Qingshan secretly calculated his gains from this trip. He had obtained several dozen pills from Xianyue, and every single one of them was even more effective than the spiritual ginseng, allowing his spirit turtle's method of Qi suppression to advance rapidly. Right now, there were still over a dozen pills that he had yet to ingest, so he carefully stored them away in a porcelain bottle. If he ate the remaining pills, he would probably be close to the first layer of the spirit turtle's method of Qi suppression. He would cultivate arduously for a while longer, recover his human form, and return to human society. And he would be able to shake off that wretched cat demon who claimed to be his master. It was killing 2 birds with 1 stone. Li Qingshan rubbed little Anne's head with a smile. I'll be able to complete my promise with you very soon. Li Qingshan did not move at all, allowing time to pass by slowly. Suddenly he felt the ground shake, but it vanished very quickly. Then, it shook again. The sky slowly darkened. Dark clouds filled the sky again, and it began to snow heavily. It was accompanied by whistling winds, blanketing the surroundings. Li Qingshan felt even more at ease. In such weather, it would be even more impossible to find him. It would be easier for Xianyue to escape too. When he thought of her, he actually felt rather reluctant to part with her. However, she must have arrived in the Dragon Province already. She would be able to live the free life she wanted very soon. Let's just hope that we're fated to meet again. Myriad Sword Technique. In the snowstorm, a bellow boomed out like a clap of thunder, shattering the snowstorm and interrupting his thoughts. Boundless killing intent enveloped him. Oh no! Li Qingshan leaped up with little and in his arms. When he looked back in midair, he saw thousands of streaks of light crisscrossing in the snowstorm. They tore apart the cliff he had been hiding in, causing it to collapse with a rumble. Li Qingshan fell onto a dried-up stream. Just as he raised his head, a 3-foot-long sword pointed straight at his forehead. It was only 3 inches away. The soaring dragon elder wielded his sword in his right hand and stood on a rock. He stared at Li Qingshan coldly. Speak. Where did that cat demon run off to? You're the soaring dragon swordsman? When Li Qingshan saw the sword immortal's appearance, he was instantly stunned. The portrait in the Dragon's Gate sect's ancestral hall appeared before his eyes again. The Dragon's Gate sect had been around for several generations. It was at least a century old, while the soaring dragon swordsman only seemed slightly older than the portrait. If he considered the fact that the Dragon's Gate sect had purposefully drawn him younger to protect their venerables, then there was basically no change. Apart from the word immortal, there was no other word that could describe him. However, he was currently being pointed at the head by a terrifying immortal. Chapter 99. You recognize me? Soaring Dragon Elder was able to form a golden core, so his mind was incredibly sharp. You were the one behind the Dragon's Gate sect's incident? Elder Divining's words about severing old ties with him happened to refer to this. Li Qingshan cursed his bad luck. He felt that the mysteries of the heavens were unfathomable. There seemed to be a pair of hands controlling everything, karma and retribution. He had destroyed the Dragon's Gate sect, and now he met the founder of the Dragon's Gate sect in such a place and in such a manner. However, when he heard that the soaring dragon elder had failed to find Xianyue, he inexplicably relaxed. At least he had not been wiped out. Therefore, he said honestly, I was the one behind the Dragon's Gate sect. The Dragon's Gate sect ran amok in the village, doing whatever they wanted. In order to steal my spirit ginseng, they tried to harm me and kill me. I destroyed them. The world is fair. The soaring dragon elder was slightly taken aback. Li Qingshan's eloquence surprised him. He was not as ignorant as ordinary fiendish demons. However, when he heard the end, he raised his eyebrows. There was a flash of sword light, dazzling Li Qingshan's eyes. Only when blood spurted from his shoulder did he realize that he had been injured by the sword. It left a terrifying wound that stretched from his shoulder to his chest. A mere fiendish demon dares claim to be fair? A spiritual item is not something a fiendish demon like you deserves to possess. Slaying fiendish demons is the way of justice. Little and spewed out the blood corpse incineration flame, but before it could reach a meter away from the soaring dragon elder, it was forced back by the spiritual energy. The soaring dragon elder glanced at him. What a pity! You have a good physique, but you have fallen to the demonic path. I will send you to hell. Then he said coldly to Li Qingshan, cut the crap. Tell me where the cat demon went, and I'll give you a quick death. I'll let you reincarnate. Don't be a demon in your next life. Otherwise, I will destroy your soul. He headed north in pursuit. However, he had lost Xuanyue's aura. He used the myriad sword art to shatter dozens of mountains and wreaked havoc in the boundless mountains. However, aside from demon commanders, who could stop him? In the end, he failed to force her out. Xuanyue's two mystical abilities were too suitable for concealment. The soaring dragon elder was in a terrible mood. Since Elder Destiny said that this trip would be a success for sure, he might even be able to fulfill his destiny. Most likely, it was going to happen to this little demon. Li Qingshan said, I don't know. Before his voice died away, blood spurted from his right shoulder. He lowered his head, clenched his fists, and crushed a handful of pebbles. Fiendish demons are all heartless. You're just a pawn it abandoned after being used. It's a waste of time for me to interrogate you. The soaring dragon elder's face was filled with pity and mockery. The sword light exploded, and with a horizontal slash, it slashed towards Li Qingshan's neck. However, Li Qingshan still didn't have the time to react. Even if he had 1,000 tricks up his sleeves, he couldn't use any of them. There was no continuous chatter. His moves were clean and precise, showing no mercy. This was what a sword immortal was like. A beam of silver light descended from the sky and shot towards the soaring dragon elder's head. The light was so serene and divine. Li Qingshan felt like he was hallucinating. It was as if a crack had opened in the dark clouds in the sky, allowing the moonlight to shine through. However, it was just a hallucination. The dark clouds remained as thick as ever, and the snow fell even more violently. Instead, a smile of joy appeared on the soaring dragon elder's face. He abandoned Li Qingshan and twisted his wrist. The light from his sword rushed into the sky. It collided with the silver light, but the sharp light shattered the serene light. It shot straight down, leaving behind a crescent-shaped hole in the ground. The soaring dragon elder fled with the light, and Li Qingshan raised his head. At the top of the valley, within the endless wind and snow, was a rather small figure. The silver light shone from the crescent moon on her forehead. Meow. Ha! A familiar laughter pierced through the wind and snow, reaching his heart. Immediately, something indescribable surged through Li Qingshan's chest. However, he said, Idiot, why did you come back? Go to your dragon province. Xianyue said, Don't talk to your master's meow. Li Qingshan said, I've said it before. You're not my master. Xianyue said, I clearly heard you calling for master to save me earlier. I didn't. Xianyue laughed aloud. I probably misheard you. Otherwise, you must have called for help inside. Li Qingshan was stunned. Yes, he was calling for help inside, asking for help from someone, but not from this cat demon, as even if she came, it would be useless. Cat demon, you refuse to take the path to heaven. The soaring dragon elder's voice rang out from the sky. Xianyue stuck out her tongue at the soaring dragon elder. She lifted her eyelids and made a face at him. Damned old man, come after me. With a turn of her body, she vanished. The cliff she stood on had already been torn to pieces by the light, and her demon chi vanished once more. The soaring dragon elder said, One sword into 10,000, 10,000 swords reign. The sword in his hand multiplied into 2, then into 3, and in the end, it turned into thousands of swords that filled the sky. Swish, swish, swish. Countless flashes of light descended from the sky like a storm, enveloping the entire valley. This was a terrifying immortal's punishment. Before such a terrifying move, demons were like pigs and dogs, while mortals were like ants. All tricks were useless, and all schemes were futile. Li Qingshan raised his head and gazed at the flashes of light that flickered like stars. It was unstoppable. There was only death. The rain of swords pierced through and shattered everything, but Li Qingshan did not die. A petite figure moved and blocked his way. The crescent moon on her forehead shone with silver light, blocking the rain of swords. Within the howling blizzard, the silver light and the rain of swords collided violently, illuminating the gloomy valley like it was daytime. The soaring dragon elder said, "This must be a life-saving move that the Dark Queen, that wretched woman, left for you. I'd like to see how long you can last." He formed a seal with his hand and pointed down. The rain of swords seemed endless. The silver light retreated inch by inch, but Xianxia gritted her teeth and endured. Li Qingshan looked at the petite figure and called out, "Go! Hide! It's useless like this." Xianxia said, "Shut up. How can a master not protect his pet? Who treats you as a master? Meow. I'm not discussing this with you." In the blink of an eye, the silver light was pressed to a foot before him, about to shatter. Even higher up in the sky, a huge, white dragon over 300 meters long twisted its body as it descended from above with a furious roar. At a closer glance, he discovered that it was not a dragon, but a tornado. It tore apart the snow and hurtled towards the soaring dragon elder. On the other side of the tornado, the jade folding fan in Gu Yenying's hand had already been completely unfurled, shining with resplendent light. Soaring dragon elder, stop. The soaring dragon elder made up his mind and completely ignored the tornado behind him. He formed a seal with his hand, and the rain of swords retracted, rapidly condensing together. It shone with dazzling light, vaguely shaped like a ball. It was like an extremely dazzling star, lighting up in the pitch-black sky. Myriad swords returned to one, meteor falls. Gu Yenying said, "Be careful." However, her voice was unable to match the speed at which the huge sword fell. Chapter 100. Li Qingshan caught her in his arms. He opened his mouth, but no words came out. This article came from "The tornado roared angrily and slammed into the soaring dragon elder's body, smashing him into the ground and pressing him down tightly. It spun rapidly like a drill bit as it drilled downwards. The sturdy frozen ground was destroyed and shattered, dust flying everywhere. The tornado turned from a white dragon of snow to a black dragon of earth. In the mountain valley, large rocks rolled and sand flew everywhere. Gu Yenying's expression was dark. She had immediately rushed over after receiving the news from the Rat King of Black Rat Mountain, but she had not expected to be one step too late. Her gaze was fixed on the ground where the tornado had drilled. "Take her away." A golden core expert was not so easily killed. She had enough confidence in a one-on-one battle and would not be at a disadvantage. However, it was almost impossible to protect the two of them. Light shot out of the deep hole the tornado had drilled. Dozens of sword lights instantly tore the tornado to pieces. The soaring dragon elder rose into the air, his body enveloped in a spherical protective light. "Gu Yenying, you can't stop me." A thread of blood seeped out of the corner of his mouth. It looked like he had not been well taken after taking that attack head-on. However, the will in his eyes was as indestructible as a tempered divine weapon. "Don't brag." Gu Yenying was truly angered. 100 dragons dancing in the heavens. With a wave of her jade folding fan, 100 tornadoes rampaged and attacked the soaring dragon elder from different directions and angles. Everything that stood in the way of the tornadoes was torn to pieces. Deep ravines were left on the ground and mountain walls. Large trees that would require several people to wrap their arms around were uprooted and sucked into the tornadoes. They were torn to pieces. In that moment, there was a wild dance of slaughter. The mountains collapsed and the earth cracked. It was like the end of the world. The soaring dragon elder's expression became more and more determined. He bit the tip of his tongue and spat a mouthful of blood onto the soaring dragon sword. The master of the Black Wind stronghold, Xianxia and Wuxia, could use his blood to activate spirit talismans with the body of a mortal and unleash power that far surpassed his own strength. Just what kind of terrifying move would a golden core expert unleash if he used this move? The sword was stained with blood. It immediately began to twist like a living creature. In the dazzling light, it transformed into a golden dragon that was more than 30 meters long. However, it did not look like a dragon. Instead, it was a real dragon with scales and claws. It shook its head and swayed its tail as it clashed with the tornadoes. Unexpectedly, it was able to fight against 100 people alone, and it was not at a disadvantage at all. You actually... Gu Yenying was shocked. For a golden core expert, it wasn't as simple as a mortal spitting out blood. Instead, it would damage one's own cultivation, so they wouldn't easily use it. The golden dragon destroyed the tornadoes one by one. Its own spiritual light also gradually dimmed. The flying dragon elder took out a magic talisman from the Sumeru ring on his finger and said, "Elder Destiny has calculated that there will be some obstacles on this trip." Purple amulet. Gu Yenying's expression became even more solemn. In the Tao of talismans, yellow talismans were the lowest, red talismans were the middle, and purple talismans were the highest. The difference in power between them was like heaven and earth. Purple talismans could only be made by nascent soul cultivators, and they were single-use items. It was extremely rare even for a golden core cultivator. It was only used as a life-saving talisman, yet he was willing to take it out. Heaven and Earth Cage, Seal. Li Qingshan carried Xianyue in his arms. He leapt up the mountain valley and headed north, towards the ice cliff. Little and followed closely behind. Li Qingshan roared at him, "Go away, don't follow me." If Gu Yenying couldn't stop the flying dragon elder and was caught up, following him would only lead to death. Little and still followed, unwilling to leave. Li Qingshan said, "Are you deaf?" With a wave of his hand, he sent him flying dozens of feet away. Little and stared at him blankly. Li Qingshan turned his head away and said, "Find a place to hide. Don't come out no matter what." Then he left resolutely. Li Qingshan carried Xianyue and advanced towards the ice sword cliff. Even though he was 10 miles away, he could still feel the spiritual light behind him soaring into the sky. Wild winds surged, and his hands were wet, the color of fresh blood intense. Xuanyue's face was pale, and she said weakly, "You are a good master." Li Qingshan said, "Shut up, don't say a word." Xianyue said, "I am your master after all, can't you be a little more courteous? You get angry at the slightest provocation, you are even more willful than me." He didn't know how long he ran in the snowstorm, whether it was an instant or a year. Suddenly, he raised his head and saw an ice cliff in front of him. They had finally arrived. Looking at it from afar was already shocking. When he stood at the bottom of the ice sword cliff, he was almost stunned by the uncanny workmanship of nature. He couldn't see the top of the cliff when he looked up. It was tens of thousands of feet high, as if it was about to topple over. Li Qingshan gritted his teeth and reached out to touch the ice cliff. A cold chill seeped into his bones. His sharp claws that could cut through metal and jade only left faint scratches on the ice. It was definitely not ordinary ice. Xianyue opened her eyes and said, "We have finally arrived. Legend has it that this ice sword cliff is a divine sword dropped by a deity." From the day it appeared, it did not melt at all. Instead, it kept freezing and growing. It is very difficult to climb, and you alone won't be able to reach it. Li Qingshan said, "Shut up and hug me." He carried Xianyue on his back and got her to wrap her arms around his neck. Afterwards, he extended his claws and gripped the ice cliff. Just when he wanted to raise his feet, he discovered that his feet were no longer human feet, but a pair of iron hooves. The ice cliff was as tough as steel, straight and shiny. It was even more difficult to climb than any other cliff. Without a pair of feet, it was impossible to climb. "Miwa!" Xianyue laughed heartlessly, just like how she used to bully Li Qingshan in the past. However, her laughter became weaker and weaker, easily drowned out by the wind and snow. Thump! Li Qingshan punched the ice cliff heavily and knelt on the ground. He had come here after so much difficulty, yet he was unable to take another step forward. The ice sword cliff was truly like a huge sword, severing all of his hopes. "I refuse to accept this." The spirit turtle's method of sea suppression circulated madly in his body. Almost miraculously, his feet actually recovered. Although they were much larger than regular feet and his nails were sharp, they were actually a pair of feet, not hooves. Originally, he could only recover his human form after reaching the first layer, but he forcefully recovered his feet with a thought in his mind. Xianxia said in surprise, "How impressive!" However, Li Qingshan could not be bothered with joy. He leapt onto the ice cliff. "Let's go!" In the snowstorm, Li Qingshan climbed up step by step with Xianxia on his back. His claws dug deeply into the ice. The coldness constantly seeped into his skin, freezing his bones. He could not see the sky, nor could he see the ground. It was as if the two of them were the only people left in the world, working arduously. What's so good about the Dragon Province? Is the nine-tailed fox empress beautiful? Is she even more beautiful than the Dark Queen? Li Qingshan rambled on. Originally, he constantly told Xianxia to shut up, but now he actually chattered away endlessly. This was because he had to do everything he could to remain clear-headed, to prevent the coldness from stealing his mind, to prevent despair from crushing him. This was because Xuanyue's body gradually grew colder and she gradually fell silent. She closed her eyes and leaned against Li Qingshan's back. She answered half-heartedly, "Of course, she's beautiful." Perhaps because her voice was too weak, it was swallowed by the wind. "Hold on. I'll definitely take you. I'll take you to the Dragon Province," Li Qingshan said constantly. Chapter 101. Li Qingshan did not even have the strength to reply. The path ahead was covered in snow and wind. It seemed endless. He only had one thought and he kept climbing. Xianxia suddenly whispered in his ear, "I'm sorry. Master has dragged you down." He let go of his arms powerlessly and fell into the abyss of snow and wind. His eyes were closed, and there was even a hint of a smile on his face. Li Qingshan subconsciously reached out with his right hand and grabbed her cold hand tightly. He could not let go, but he could not take a step forward on the ice wall without his right hand. As he stopped moving, the cold invaded his body, and his blood gradually stopped flowing. He was already 3,000 feet above the ground. Even if it was him, if he fell, he would be smashed to pieces. In the snowstorm, he finally let out a hysterical howl, like a trapped beast in a desperate situation. In the snow and wind, two red lights approached, and a figure quickly climbed up. Little and grabbed Xianxia and carried her on Li Qingshan's back. There was no need to exchange words. Li Qingshan's mouth had already frozen. He freed his right hand and continued climbing. He suddenly saw the end of the seemingly endless ice cliff. He was only a few dozen feet from the top. A large hand grabbed the edge of the cliff, and Li Qingshan climbed up with all his might. He no longer had any strength left in him. He forced himself to stay upright, and with trembling hands, he touched Emo Xuanyue's face. It was cold. His chest did not beat. She was already dead. Li Qingshan suddenly burst into tears. A ray of light pierced through the snow, and the soaring dragon elder appeared at the top of the cliff. His face was pale, and his clothes were tattered. He looked at Xianxia on the ground, and an expression of, as expected, appeared on his face. His meteor sword. It was not something an ordinary demon general could bear. However, just in case, he had chased after her at all costs. Furthermore, the things stored in Xuanyue's bell could make up for his losses. A demon general's demon core was also very precious. Li Qingshan wanted to fight for his life, but he did not even have the strength to do so. He questioned, "Why? What did she do wrong?" "Because she's a demon, and so are you?" "That's wrong." The soaring dragon elder raised his soaring dragon sword and swung it down without even looking at Little End, who was standing in front of Li Qingshan. "I didn't kill you because you're human." A man stood in front of Li Qingshan. No one knew when he had appeared, including the soaring dragon elder. It was as if he had been standing there since a long time ago, like an expert from ancient times to the future. Eternal and unchanging. His figure could only be considered tall, and he did not emit any terrifying aura. However, in Li Qingshan's eyes, his back was even more majestic than the ice sword cliff beneath his feet. His skin was covered in a layer of navy blue. His sturdy physique didn't seem bulky at all. Instead, it was like the undulating peaks of a great mountain that had withstood thousands of years of wind and rain. Every part of it was natural and harmonious, condensing endless power. Then, Li Qingshan saw a pair of ox horns on his head, one of which was broken. He couldn't help but call out, "Brother Ox!" The soaring dragon elder's eyes narrowed. Every part of his soul screamed out in warning. He had crossed countless battlefields and experienced countless dangers in his life, but none of them added up to the danger he was in right now. He wanted to roar out furiously, he wanted to swing his sword. He wanted to use all the abilities and techniques he had learnt in his life, to unleash all of his power and trump cards, but he just happened to be unable to move a single finger. All he could do was stare at the man with widened eyes and say with an off-key voice, "Who are you? How could such a terrifying figure become the backer of two lesser demons?" The divining elder had never mentioned this, and the divination did not show anything either. "It can't be. I won't die here." Oxen did not answer his question. Instead, he continued, "I'm killing you because I want to." He extended his right hand. With that, the soaring dragon elder vanished from this world. Yes, he had vanished. There were no signs, no powerful moves, no terrifying demon chi, and the first elder of the Sword Collection Palace, a golden core cultivator, who was renowned throughout the Green Province, had been killed in such a straightforward manner. "Brother Ox." Li Qingshan opened his mouth, but he had no idea what to say. He had considered Oxen to be very powerful, but he never expected him to be so terrifying. Oxen turned around and extended his hand before Li Qingshan. A jade ring lay there quietly. It was the soaring dragon elder's Sumeru ring. "I've turned you into this without your consent. You can treat this as my apology. I've left something in there for you." The value of a golden core cultivator's entire life's treasures was so great that it could even make the eyes of many disinterested cultivators green with greed. Even if a regular person sold everything they had, they would not be able to exchange it for a single item. "I know you have many questions, but believe me, the answers you've found yourself are far more valuable than what I can give you. It's just like how I can give you the power to sweep through this world, but I don't, because the power you can find is 100 times more powerful than what I can give you. Now it's time for us to part." "What?" "My existence has already been discovered by a certain person in the heavens. You'll have to walk your own path in the future. These days might have been short, but they've been very pleasant. Remember, don't lower your head to anyone or anything. You've once ridden on my back." As he spoke, Oxen's figure gradually faded. His voice was like a great bell, shaking up mountains and thunder, shaking up Li Qingshan's soul. "Hold on." Li Qingshan extended his hand, but he only grabbed the ring. Oxen vanished from the world, as if he had never existed in the first place. It was as if all these years and days were just a dream. Only his final words constantly echoed in Li Qingshan's heart. "I'll wait for you above the heavens. I'll wait for the day when we stand shoulder to shoulder." The sky above Ice Sword Cliff was completely barren. There was not a single blade of grass, only ice and snow. The clouds hung low over his head, and the snow that had yet to form beautiful snowflakes fell. The wind whistled as if it was crying. On the border between the Dragon Province and the Green Province, would people sometimes feel like they had nothing? Apart from an extremely distant, unreachable dream, there was only an ice-cold body in their arms, their tears frozen, and their souls numb from the bitter cold. The loneliness of the entire world surged into his heart. Something gently touched him. He looked back and saw little Anne. The two blood-red flames burned in the endless snow, wanting to give him some warmth, to tell him that he was not alone. Gu Yenying stepped out of the wind and snow and said in surprise, "What's happened?" She took out a purple talisman and forcefully broke through the soaring dragon elder's cage of heaven and earth, rushing to the cliff. However, just now, the soaring dragon elder's presence had completely vanished. It had vanished completely. Li Qingshan held Xuanyue's cold corpse in his arms. He did not reply, nor did he know how to reply. Gu Yenying even felt a sliver of fear. A golden core elder had mysteriously vanished just like that. This would probably shake up the entire Green Province. Could it be that person from the Xianxia sect? No, even if a nascent soul cultivator had the ability to kill a golden core cultivator, it was impossible for them to do it so silently. Even an ant knew how to struggle, let alone a golden core cultivator. Did it have something to do with him? Gu Yanyin glanced at Li Qingshan and then shook her head. Li Qingshan was just too weak. If he had such a terrifying background, how could he still have such a level of cultivation? Demonic beasts that had yet to condense demon cores were only at the 4th or 5th layer among Qi practitioners. Even though she was far more intelligent than ordinary people, her mind was still a mess. Tonight's events were really too strange. Leave her to me. Li Qingshan said, I promise to take her to the Dragon Province. Gu Yanyin said, that's not a good place to go. You should return her to her master's side. Li Qingshan said, that's her final wish. Final wish? She's not dead yet? The corner of Gu Yanying's lips twitched. What? Li Qingshan was shocked. He checked Xuanyue's pulse in a hurry, but it was no longer beating. He looked at Gu Yanyin in question. Gu Yanyin waved the fan in her hand towards the sky, and a tornado rushed into the sky. The thick clouds that were originally extremely low above their heads were pierced through by the tornado. The silver-blue moonlight was like a waterfall, or a searchlight that fell from the sky. It shone on the ice sword cliff and landed on Xianxia. The surroundings were still surrounded by the howling blizzard, but this small region was so quiet and peaceful. Her body glowed with silver-blue light. Gradually, it grew brighter and brighter. Her eyelashes seemed to tremble. Under Li Qingshan's shocked gaze, Xianxia slowly opened her eyes. Where is this? She blinked and looked around. This is the ice sword cliff. Li Qingshan felt the body in his arms gradually regain warmth. He said in surprise, what's going on? Gu Yanyin said, the 9 lives cat demon's innate trash ability. Xianxia said, the one with the surname Gu, you're the trash. Gu Yanyin said, there's no way to resist in a dead state. Most people would cut open their stomachs and take out their demon cores. If it's not trash, then what is it? This time, it's all thanks to this guy. She didn't know how to address Li Qingshan. He might not want others to know his human name after becoming like this. Xianxia said, Blackie, you really brought me up here? Blackie? Gu Yanying's lips curled. Li Qingshan was silent for a while, then roared, scoundrel, why didn't you say so earlier? Making him sad for so long. Xianxia said, meow ha, didn't I say it? I won't die. Li Qingshan heaved a heavy sigh. He didn't want to pay attention to her, but he was indescribably happy. At this moment, Xianxia noticed the 2 crystalline streaks of frozen tears on Li Qingshan's face. She felt like something tugged at the depths of her heart. She extended her hand and touched his cheek. Big Blacko, you're crying? Li Qingshan said, don't flatter yourself. It's just snow water. Xianxia moved closer to Li Qingshan's face. Hee, don't be shy. It's normal for pets to cry for their masters. Oh right, you promised to call me master. Hurry up and call me master. Chapter 102. Li Qingshan looked at his hand. It was a bottle of pills. Gu Yanyin acted like she did not see it. With a wave of her hand, she kicked up a whirlwind, taking her and Xianxia along the path of the moonlight and flying into the horizon. Xianxia glanced back at Li Qingshan again before turning her head away. Her smile vanished, and tears flowed out of her eyes that were like lakes. Wait for me. I'll definitely go, Li Qingshan roared at the sky as loudly as he could. Xianxia suddenly looked back and said something loudly, but her voice was swallowed by the wind and snow. However, the shape of her lips could be vaguely seen. I'll wait for you. Gu Yanyin was surprised as well. The clouds closed up beneath their feet. The final sliver of moonlight vanished from the ice sword cliff. Li Qingshan maintained his posture of roaring at the sky. That roar was a promise to Oxen, to Xianxia, and more importantly, to himself. I'll definitely go beyond the 9 heavens. I'll definitely take you to the Dragon Province. I'll definitely find the answer. I'll definitely possess power. The waterfall flowed down, and Li Qingshan stood before the waterfall once again. The overbearing oxen was no longer beside him, nor was the girl bathing in the waterfall before him. He rubbed Little An's head. "At least you're still by my side." Without Xuanyue's guidance, he followed the original path with his memory and returned here once again. Although he had the spirit turtle's aura concealment, who knew how many dangers he encountered along the way before finally returning to the waterfall. Winter had already passed, and spring had begun. It felt like a lifetime had passed. In the short 3 months, someone had told him that the Green Province spanned 15,000 kilometers. Someone had told him, "My goal is to leave the Green Province." In the end, someone had told him, "I'll wait for you beyond the 9 heavens." Li Qingshan lowered his head and smiled. He said to Little Anne, "Let's see how far I can go." Afterwards, he leapt into the pool. In the water, the first thing Li Qingshan did was not cultivate. Instead, he summed up his experiences and lessons, weighing the pros and cons. It was very difficult for a small shrimp to have a good ending when it was involved in a battle between sharks. The minced meat that was exposed between the teeth of the sharks could greatly increase the strength of the small shrimp, but it would also cause it to die a violent death. He could survive. It was all thanks to the protection of oxen, but this big sea monster had already left him, leaving him the target of such a huge sea monster. If he wanted to achieve this goal, he couldn't rely on luck to survive and take risks that he couldn't control. No one had an immortal halo, and even if they did, they would be easily crushed under absolute power. Not only did one have to possess the fortitude of an ox and the bravery of a tiger, but they also had to possess the depth and forbearance of a spirit turtle. He was not a coward who swallowed humiliation. Instead, it was to have lofty ambitions, to endure what others could not, to achieve what adults could not. The reason why Oxen didn't kill the Soaring Dragon Elder right from the start was that the Soaring Dragon Elder had been killed by the Soaring Dragon Elder. Perhaps it was to let him understand these principles. Anyone could talk about the big principles, but only after experiencing them would one truly understand and carve them in one's heart. If he hadn't heard the despair of the screams on the precipice, how would he have understood the value of strength and the meaning of friendship? He longed for even greater strength. There was no time in the mountains. The tender shoots turned into green leaves, and the flower buds bloomed with flowers. The water volume of the waterfall also became greater than in the winter, and the sound became even louder. Li Qingshan sat under the waterfall. All of these sounds, all of these changes, entered his ears, but they didn't affect his mind in the slightest. Between extreme stillness and extreme movement, he was no longer just cultivating, but also experiencing the sounds and changes of nature. Perhaps to him, these two things were the same thing in the first place. He ingested the spiritual herbs one by one, and they turned into surging spiritual energy. However, to him, this was not the only thing he needed. In absolute meditation, he could vaguely sense the existence of that incomparably vast spiritual energy in the world. It was everywhere, and it ruled over all the sounds and changes of the world. When he was like a spirit turtle hiding in the deep sea, forgetting his own existence, the spiritual energy no longer repelled him and naturally merged into his body. Just like the Daoist scriptures said, "Strengthen the bones, weaken the will, empty the heart, strengthen the stomach." It was also like what Oxen had taught him at the beginning. Filling the stomach and strengthening the body was the foundation of everything. Only by being humble and having weak will could one not be bothered by distracting thoughts, reach the true unity of heaven and man, and feel the existence of the spiritual energy of heaven and earth. For humans, this was something that could only be easily achieved after the chi condensation stage had passed the first heavenly tribulation and reached the foundation establishment stage. Otherwise, it would require a great deal of luck and comprehension. But for demons, this was an innate instinct. In the eyes of humans, the birds and beasts in the wild were undoubtedly stupid. They only mated, hunted, and reproduced based on their instincts. However, they were a part of nature and could naturally feel many things that humans couldn't, and spiritual energy was just one of them. While humans gained intelligence, they also lost the ability to be one with nature. They had to use all kinds of methods to cultivate in order to extend their lifespan. and the lifespan of any demon was much longer than that of a human with similar strength to them. Perhaps this was the fairness of nature. Oxen had once said that Li Qingshan could only be regarded as half a demon, because while his body had become that of a demon, his mind was still that of a human's, so he was unable to sense the spiritual energy of the world. There were countless techniques in the world, and who knew how many techniques that could turn people into monsters? However, they would only be monsters, not demons. If that were the case, there would be nothing special about Oxen's design. However, he seemed to have prepared everything for Li Qingshan a long time ago. As he practiced the spirit turtle's method of sea suppression, Li Qingshan could temporarily set aside his human intelligence and the distracting thoughts that came from this intelligence. He began to truly become a demon, viewing the world through the eyes of a demon and comprehending the world through the mind of a demon. After who knew how long, when the flowers began to wither, large amounts of spiritual energy gathered around Li Qingshan. Large amounts of spiritual energy gathered around Li Qingshan. The place Oxen had chosen was a place with dense spiritual energy in the first place. All of the pills had been consumed, and all of the demon qi in Li Qingshan's body surged like waves before being suppressed by the spirit turtle's method of sea suppression, constantly compressed and condensed. Little An, who played by himself to one side, suddenly raised his head and gazed at the waterfall. In the past few days, he had been waiting silently, playing with himself and never distancing himself. The spirit turtle's method of sea suppression. An invisible force flattened the turbulent water, turning it into a flawless mirror. The waterfall no longer created any splashes either. Li Qingshan had finally reached the first layer of the spirit turtle's method of sea suppression. At the same time, there was a great rumble in his soul, and his body grew larger once again, approaching 20 meters. The aura he gave off even made the waterfall shake. All of the demon qi in his body condensed into a pearl the size of a pinky. He had finally completed the most important step of becoming a demon, condensing a demon core. Li Qingshan lowered his head and gazed at the mirror like water. He gently stroked the pair of ox horns on his head. The two words, North Moon, did not seem as obvious anymore, but they seemed to have merged with the grain of the horns. They were indelible. He thought of Xianxia again. He thought of the promise that he had yet to complete. He closed his eyes gently. Wait for me. I will definitely break you out of this cage and send you to the Dragon Province. Suddenly, he opened his mouth, and the demon core flew out. It revolved around him as if it was being drawn in by some invisible force. With a thought, the demon core shot out, immediately piercing several boulders in the water. It was basically indestructible, more terrifying than any hidden weapon. Demons did not know how to refine pills, so they were born with the ability to absorb spiritual energy. Demons did not know how to forge artifacts either, so their demon cores were their most powerful weapons. Although there was the danger of someone stealing the demon core after releasing it, that could only be achieved when there was an absolute difference in strength. As a result, this danger was not exactly dangerous, as even if they did not use the demon core, they would still be finished off and their demon core extracted. It was just like when human cultivators fought. If even the flying swords they released were easily captured by their opponents, there would be no need for them to continue fighting. Li Qingshan looked at the demon core hovering before him and thought, even if I say I'm a human now, no one will believe me. He observed it closely and discovered that the demon core was not perfectly round. Instead, it was pieced together from countless tiny hexagons. It seemed to be slightly different from regular demon cores, probably due to the effects of the spirit turtle's method of sea suppression. However, he had only seen a single demon core before, so he was uncertain. Li Qingshan extended his right hand, and transparent ripples of water gathered in his palm, condensing into a ball of water before changing into various shapes. In terms of the 5 elements, he was a water-type demon, possessing the power to control water. He casually tossed the ball of water aside and swallowed the demon core in a single gulp. He called out, "Spirit Turtle's profound shell." A turtle shell did not appear on his back. Instead, he propped up a spherical barrier of light. At a closer glance, the sphere was the same as the demon core, also composed of countless hexagons. The raging waterfall landed on the spirit turtle's profound shell, but not a single droplet of water landed on Li Qingshan. This was the innate ability he had comprehended after condensing the demon core, but that was not all. Li Qingshan stood up and sucked in a deep breath. He raised his head and let out a wild roar. Demon chi catalyzed sound waves, kicking up fierce gales that rushed into the sky. The waterfall was blown apart, and it even left behind a deep, fan-shaped mark on the rock face. The tiger demon's fierce roar seemed impressive, but it could only cause tremors. It was used to bully the weak. It was basically useless against opponents of the same level. Although the range of his roar had been reduced, it was still powerful enough to split rocks, causing actual damage. This was the second ability he had comprehended. He named it the Tiger Demon's Slaughter Roar. The Ox Demon Tramples. Li Qingshan leapt into the pool and landed heavily on the bottom. The rocks that had been battered by the water for who knew how many years shattered loudly. A circular shockwave surged into the surroundings. Wherever it passed by, the rocks would shatter loudly. It was like thousands of tons of explosives had been detonated underwater. All of the water was thrown into the air, revealing the completely shattered bottom. The ox, tiger, and turtle. 3 creatures, 3 innate abilities. The moment Li Qingshan condensed the demon core, they all awakened at the same time. Chapter 103. Returning to the world, the pond water turned into a rainstorm and fell. Under the sunlight, it formed a rainbow. Li Qingshan's eyes were tightly shut and his expression was solemn. In his body, the demon core had retracted all of its aura and kept sinking. It was like a spirit turtle retracting into its shell and sinking into the deep sea trench. After 1,000 years of hibernation, it was no longer noticed by anyone. Its existence had become a legend. When Li Qingshan opened his eyes again and leaped to the edge of the pond, he arrived in front of little Li Qingshan had become the original Li Qingshan again. Perhaps it was not accurate to say that, because the current him did not have any distinct muscles, nor did he have a sharp temperament. His brilliance was restrained. At first glance, he looked like an ordinary youth from a mountain village. There was nothing special about him. However, deep in his eyes, there was a calmness and depth like the deep sea. He looked at his human hands and suddenly remembered that he was already 16 years old. When he was a demon, his concept of time would become blurry. After returning to his human form, it suddenly became clear again. He had been in this world for 16 years. What he experienced in this half a year was more exciting than the previous 15.5 years combined. From human to demon, and from demon to human. All of the demon aura on his body had been completely restrained into the demon core. It did not leak out at all. Even other cultivators would not be able to tell that he was actually a demon. It was funny to say that after he comprehended the true path of the demon, he had regained everything of a human. There were billions of living creatures in the world. Why could humans not cultivate to become demons? It was said that when a cat cultivated to become a demon, it was called a cat demon. When a tiger cultivated to become a demon, it was called a tiger demon. What was the name of a human cultivated to become a demon? Transvestite? Li Qingshan felt a chill run down his spine. He decided not to think about this question anymore. He called out to Little Anne and said, "Sorry to keep you waiting. We can go now." Little Anne's eyes also lit up with joy. He snuggled up to Li Qingshan. Li Qingshan then took out the Sumeru ring that Oxen had left for him. He did not know what material it was made of, but it was crystal clear and did not emit any spiritual light. Now, all the true qi in his body had been transformed into demonic qi and restrained, so he could not open it at all. Although he was curious about what Oxen had left for him, he could only endure it for the time being and slowly think of a way. He tied the ring around his neck like a necklace and hid it in his clothes. He touched the charred locust wood tablet and said, "Let's go. Compared to those distant goals, I'll help you recover your human form first. But now, you have to hide again." Li Qingshan always remembered his responsibility towards this child. It was Little and who worked hard to help him at every critical moment. Even in the most dangerous of times, she did not abandon him. He wouldn't say any words of gratitude. He would just silently bury this feeling in the bottom of his heart. Moreover, the feelings and fetters between them had long since surpassed mere gratitude. He raised his head and looked at the rainbow. One figure after another appeared in his mind. Oxen, Little and Gu Yening, Xianyue. Those expectations, those promises, those ambitions, he would fulfill them one by one. The mountain forest returned to its calm state once more. However, the deep pool no longer stirred up a whirlpool. It had been completely suppressed by Li Qingshan's demonic qi. This 16-year-old youth, who possessed both human and demonic qi, once again stepped into the human world. How many dangers would he be able to overcome and how many storms would he be able to quell? Li Qingshan brought Little into the ruins of the Black Wind stronghold. However, he could not help but frown. Since he was going to return to the human world, he naturally had to use gold and silver to pave the way. The silver notes he had on him had been destroyed in the battle at the Mountain God Temple and could no longer be used. He then thought of the wealth he had left behind in the Black Wind stronghold. Fortunately, he had foresight. Then, when he came to take a look, he discovered that there were traces of excavation everywhere. As expected, the secret room beneath Xianxiangwu's bedroom had been excavated as well. The items inside were obviously all clean. Li Qingshan sucked in a deep breath. What's this? A treasure-raiding officer? In Qingyang City, Yi Dechuan ravished a transfer order in joy. I've finally left this damned place. After destroying the Black Wind stronghold and adding the Dragon's Gate sect to the list of evil local organizations, he reported it to the Clear River Prefecture as a meritorious deed. After a series of investigations, it was delivered to the prefect's desk. The sacred church, even the prefect, was rather surprised that Yi Dechuan could do something like that. Unable to withstand his beloved concubine's pillow talk, he finally approved a transfer order and transferred Yi Dechuan away from Qingyang City. Of course, returning to the noisy Clear River Prefecture was impossible, but he had been transferred to the most prosperous city in the surrounding several hundred kilometers, Jiaping City. How could Yi Dechuan not ravish with joy? The advisor said, "Congratulations, master." "Congratulations, master." Yi Dechuan rejoiced for a while before saying gloomily, "I pity that brother Qingshan of mine. He was the kind of person who did not forget to dig a well." The advisor sighed. "My condolences, sir. This is all fate. No one can do anything about it." Yi Dechuan thought about it and emerged from the gloom very soon. Don't forget to burn some paper money before you leave so that brother Qingshan can bribe the envoys of hell so that he can live a better life in the netherworld and join a good family in his next life. Join what good family? Li Qingshan leapt over the wall with a strange expression and landed in the courtyard. Of course it's a ghost. Yi Dechuan answered casually. His voice gradually slowed down, and he made out the appearance of the newcomer. He finally cried out and hid behind the armchair in a flash. The advisor said, "Sir, calm down, calm down. It's broad daylight, so how can there be any ghosts? Sheriff Li has returned." Yi Dechuan glanced at Li Qingshan. All he saw was the blazing summer sun casting a long shadow beneath Li Qingshan's feet. Just now, he let out a sigh of relief and emerged from behind the armchair. He grabbed Li Qingshan's hand. "Brother Qingshan, you've finally returned. Where have you been all this time?" As he said that, his eyes welled up with tears. Li Qingshan pulled his hand back. "I was slightly injured, so I went into secluded cultivation in the mountains for a while. Do you think I'm dead?" Yi Dechuan said, "As long as you're alive, as long as you're alive." Afterwards, he told him the whole story. As it turned out, news of Feng Zhang leading a group of first-rate masters to surround and attack Li Qingshan had spread like wildfire. In the end, all of them vanished into the mountains together. In these few months, many people entered the mountains to search, but they could only find the mountain god temple that had been burnt to ashes. The remaining bones could not be distinguished at all, so rumors spread everywhere. Some said that after Feng Zhang obtained the spiritual ginseng, he killed everyone to silence them and then went into hiding. There were also people who said that it was another expert who killed all of them. But no matter which rumor it was, Li Qingshan was a dead man. No one thought that he could survive under such circumstances, so everyone thought that he was dead. However, they did not expect that in the end, Li Qingshan would actually walk out of the mountains, and he was the only one to do so. It's good that you're back. You can come with me to Jiaping. Look, what's this? Yi Dechuan smugly slapped the transfer order, his fat face smiling so widely that it almost disappeared. He was happy from the bottom of his heart that Li Qingshan could return. Li Qingshan was his lucky general. When Li Qingshan saw the transfer order, he asked curiously, Jiaping County's lieutenant. Doesn't that mean I've been demoted by half a rank? Regular, smaller cities did not have county lieutenants. Only larger ones would have them, with some even having 2 or 3. They were below the district magistrate, so they obviously could not compare to the authority that the district magistrate wielded. Yi Dechuan said, that's something you don't know. Better to beg in a gold nest than to claim yourself king in a dog nest. What kind of profit is there in a crappy place like Qingyang City? Even if you make money, you won't even be able to find a decent brothel to drink in. As Li Qingshan listened to the district magistrate talk about eating, drinking, whoring, and gambling, he could not help but laugh. He felt a sense of realism from returning to the human world. Perhaps it was the 3 vulgarities, but weren't these the things that humans pursued? However, the 2 words, Jiaping City, made his heart skip a beat. He rubbed the Iron Wolf tablet in his bosom. The Scarlet Hawk commander, Old Wang, had once said that if he survived he could report to Zhuozhibwa in Jiaping City and become a Hawkwolf guard. However, he had not considered this thoroughly yet, so he was unable to make a decision right now. Since he had killed Feng Zhang, he might have some colleagues or acquaintances in Jiaping City. Zhuozhibwa, who had sent Feng Zhang to Qingyang, might not have a good opinion of him either. The advisor really was an advisor after all. Although he did not know so much, he had still thought of this step. He reminded Yi Dechuan that arrogant Feng Zhang came from Jiaping City, and even now, we still don't know where he is. The reason for his disappearance was obviously because of Li Qingshan. He could not guarantee that the Hawkwolf Guard would not investigate this. Yi Dechuan's expression changed as well. Yeah. Brother Qingshan, you have to be careful, or you better run. Just pretend none of us have seen you return. With his identity, he still did not know that Feng Zhang had already been dismissed by Wang Pushi. The disappearance of a Hawkwolf guard was a matter of great importance. Li Qingshan said, "Thank you for your concern, sir, but there's no need to worry about this. I have something I'd like to ask you about." "What?" Li Qingshan said, "Who dug up the Black Wind stronghold?" It was impossible for such a great project to go unnoticed. No matter where he went, he could not go without money. Plucking hair from the bottom of a tiger came with a price. Yi Dechuan said, Iron Fist brought people. Qingshan, don't be rash. There's nothing to be rash about. I just want my money back. Are they bold enough to refuse? Li Qingshan was rather confused by Yi Dechuan's attitude. He had destroyed the Black Wind stronghold and the Dragon's Gate sect. Would Iron Fist still be bold enough to make things difficult for him? Yi Dechuan said, "A protector has come to Iron Fist recently. He seems to be investigating the whereabouts of that bird hall lord. Lu Hong dug up those items to show his respect. I heard he's an innate master as well, so he might not be easy to deal with." Li Qingshan said, "I'll be careful." With that, he vanished from the wall. He crossed over the many roofs and arrived in Iron Fist. However, he was in no hurry to show himself. Instead, he listened attentively. He withdrew his demon chi and assumed human form. Although his senses were not as sharp as a demon, they were still far superior to regular people. Within a range of 300 meters, he could even hear the sound of a mosquito. He immediately found Lu Hong's location. Chapter 104. A visit to collect debts. An old man in maroon robes with a goatee checked their pulses one by one. He would shake his head at times and nod at others. Sometimes, his eyes would shine, and sometimes, his hands would move up and down. To the left of the sacred hall was Lu Hong of the Iron Fist, while Li Long stood behind him, ready to pour him more tea at any time. A group of disciples of the Iron Fist stood in a human wall, blocking off many people of various ages and genders. They all seemed to be the relatives of these children. They all looked at their children nervously. If they received a nod from the old man, they would smile from ear to ear. If the old man shook his head, they would become dejected. This was an important figure from the prefectural city of Clear River that was thousands of kilometers away, a mighty protector of the Iron Fist. His martial arts had reached perfection. If they could gain his recognition, then their children would truly reach the heavens in a single step. Li Qingshan saw the old man with a single glance. The old man's aura was heavy, slightly more powerful than Feng Zhang's. He really was an innate master, but he was not a dangerous figure. If he demonified, he was confident he could kill the old man in a single strike. Even if he maintained his human form, it would not be too troublesome. All he needed was some effort. He was only curious about what he was doing. Lu Hong sat beside the old man. Although they were both old, even ignorant children could tell who was stronger or weaker. Lu Hong sighed inside. Recently, many impressive figures had come to Qingyang City. Ever since he came to Qingyang City to retire, it had already been many years since he last saw Protector Yen Song. Speaking of which, with his second-rate martial arts, he had only seen him a few times in the past. The last time he saw him was during the main branch leader's birthday banquet over a decade ago. Back then, he was still in his prime, and Protector Yen was like this. Now, he had already become an old man, but Protector Yen did not seem to have changed at all. Lu Hong said, "Protector Yen, rest up. Please have some tea." To his side, Li Long filled up the tea in a hurry. Although Hall Chief Wu had died, canceling his plan to leave Qingyang City, he was happy instead. He never liked that Hall Chief Wu very much in the first place. He had been rude to his master, so he deserved to die. In the blink of an eye, Protector Yen had arrived. Not only was he more skilled in martial arts, but his bearing was much steadier too. He was arrogant, but he did not show it. He could even directly take him to the Clear River Prefecture. Yen Song stopped and leisurely took a sip of tea. "I'm old, my bones are not good enough." He let the children stand under the sun. Lu Hong said, "Zhang Duozu? Don't worry. You can be considered a senior in the sect. That surnamed Wu is useless, so how can he blame you? I will make things clear with the leader." Yen Song was in a good mood. Of course, it was because he had received a lot of benefits from Lu Hong. He did not care too much about silver, but one of the ancient paintings came from a famous artist. It could be said that it was hard to obtain even with 1,000 taels of gold. It was exactly what he wanted. Yen Song said, "Then thank you, Protector. What do you think of these children?" Yen Song said, "There are still a few good seedlings among these children. Although I don't know whether they can practice qi or not, they're good enough to practice martial arts at the very least. If this were Clear River City, the children with better talent would have been scavenged away a long time ago. Even a good seedling has to be fought over. How can they be picked so casually?" Lu Hong said, "It's all thanks to the wisdom of the leader." At this moment, Yen Song raised his head and saw a gap in the human wall formed by the Iron Fist disciples. A young man walked in, but he only glanced at him before ordering, "Let him out. He's too old." And he was far too ordinary. There was nothing worthy of his attention at all. However, the Iron Fist disciples did not stop the young man as he said. Instead, they parted in fear. Yen Song was rather confused. He saw Li Long and even Lu Hong widen their eyes. "Li Qingshan." The crowd broke into a discussion. "Isn't that Li Qingshan? The Black Tiger Li Qingshan. I heard he died? Why has he returned?" Li Qingshan could be regarded as famous in Qingyang City now. Li Qingshan walked over and waved his hand with a smile. "Sect Master Lu, long time no see. You must be some protector. It's an honor to meet you." Yen Song's eyebrows twitched. He remembered the other reason he had come. Was it not because of this young man? The Holy Church. Lu Hong said awkwardly, "Why, you've returned." Li Qingshan cut straight to the point. "I've come to be an unwelcome guest this time. Please return a few items to me, Sect Master Lu. If you want to exchange them for silver notes, I'd rather take less." After all, it wasn't easy for you to dig them out. Right now, Li Qingshan seemed very gentle. He did not have the slightest air of malice. Lu Hong looked at Yen Song. Yen Song sipped his tea and said indifferently, "You're Li Qingshan? You're still bold enough to return? I'll ask a question now, and you'll answer one question. If you don't answer one question, I'll slap you." How did Hall Chi-Fu die? He did not even stand up. This was not a person worthy of him standing up. Moreover, Li Qingshan's disrespect made him rather annoyed. Li Qingshan was actually bold enough to ask him for something. And there were many signs that proved that Hall Chi-Fu's death was closely related to this person. He obviously would not be polite to his enemy. Was Li Qingshan hiding his strength? Perhaps. But even if Li Qingshan was a first-rate master, or even an innate master who had reached the Qi refining stage, so what? With his Qi refining stage 2 strength, how could he put a few people in his eyes? Li Qingshan was not unfamiliar with this kind of behavior. It was because he had absolute confidence in his own strength. He believed that he could control the situation and that everyone had to listen to his arrangements and be at his mercy. However, when Li Qingshan saw those figures who soared through the sky and saw Yen Song's current appearance, he found it extremely hilarious. He was like a toad croaking loudly, ordering around a swarm of flies, believing himself to be a king just because he pointed his finger at them. So Li Qingshan laughed. "At least I'm a frog, and a very strong one at that." The corner of Lu Hong's eye twitched. After not seeing him for a few months, this brat went out for a walk. He originally thought that he would restrain himself a little, but he did not expect that when he came back, he would still be like this. On the surface, he looked calm, but in his bones, he was extremely arrogant. Yen Song's expression turned cold. "What are you laughing at?" Li Qingshan said, "When I see something funny, I will naturally laugh." Yen Song slowly stood up and said, "Try laughing again and try." Li Qingshan said, "Don't talk nonsense, I let you eat all my things, now spit them out for me." Without any warning, Yen Song crossed the distance of several feet in one step and arrived in front of Li Qingshan. He raised his hand and ruthlessly slapped down. He wanted to slap Li Qingshan so that he would never laugh again in this life. He wanted him to know that provoking the iron fist had a price to pay. Pa! A resounding slap. Yen Song tilted his head to the side, his old face rippling. His eyes were wide open, and one of his teeth flew out. His heart was full of disbelief. He clearly did not feel a trace of inner force or true qi from Li Qingshan, but his speed was so fast and fierce. Could it be that he was a body-refining expert? But he did not look like a body-refining expert at all. When Li Qingshan saw that Yen Song wanted to slap him, he did not feel much anger in his heart. Instead, he sighed. Yen Song's originally fast and fierce movements were now so slow in his eyes, so slow that he almost doubted whether his estimation was wrong or not. And because Yen Song underestimated his opponent, he revealed many flaws. Of course, Li Qingshan would not let him go. He slapped Yen Song's face, his smile unchanged. "If you don't spit it out, I will hit you until you spit it out." Protector Yen. Lu Hong was dumbfounded. The inviolable Protector Yen was actually slapped in front of so many people. He was even more surprised that Li Qingshan had become so strong. This kind of growth speed was simply too frightening. The crowd also cried out in surprise. They were willing to bring their children here because Yen Song had revealed his true skills. He had destroyed a wooden pillar that was one zhang away with a single punch. In their eyes, it was simply the means of an immortal. Li Long could not help but rub his eyes. Was this really the cowherd boy from Snail Village? He felt that he did not know this fellow villager more and more. Yen Song was furious. He took a step back, adjusted his posture, and all the qi in his body surged into his fists. But when Li Qingshan saw this posture, how could he give him a chance to attack? He took a step forward and slapped down again. Li Qingshan's strength was so great that Yen Song was dizzy from the slap. The qi that he had just gathered dispersed, but he was unwilling to give up and circulated it again, wanting to kill Li Qingshan. Pa! The third slap came down. Close combat with bare fists was like this. Once you were at a disadvantage, it was very difficult to get back. Put, put, put. The slap was extremely loud, shaking the entire martial arts field. Other than the slap, there was no other sound. Whenever Yen Song showed any signs of counterattacking, Li Qingshan would hit him without holding back. The reason why he chose to slap was not just to return a tooth for a tooth, but also because he did not have any killing intent, so he could not attack with great force. However, if he wanted to suppress Yen Song, hitting his head was the best choice. The slap was not fatal, and it could produce a concussive and dizzying effect, disrupting Yen Song's movements. It was truly the best method. Yen Song retreated step by step, and Li Qingshan advanced step by step. Clang! Yen Song sat back down on his armchair, protecting his head and face, and called out, "Stop hitting me!" After taking a few slaps, he instead woke up from his rage, and it turned into fear. Li Qingshan could kill him, and the older people got, the more they cherished their lives. As expected, Li Qingshan stopped. "Hand over my things." Yen Song's face alternated between pale and red, and he roared, "Lu Hong! What are you still standing there for?" At the same time, he quietly reached into his bosom. He also had a talisman as a trump card. In front of so many people, he had lost so much face. If he did not take revenge, he was not a man. Li Qingshan said, "I advise you not to use it." Yen Song's hand trembled. Li Qingshan said, "You want to slap my face, so I will slap your face. You want to kill me, so I can only kill you." Li Qingshan's words were calm and steady, and he did not even stop Yen Song from taking the talisman. Yen Song pinched the corner of the talisman, and his expression changed even more. For a moment, he could not take it out. Welcome to Immortal Cultivation Audiobooks, your gateway to the mystical world of Xianxia. Dive into legendary tales of martial arts, spiritual growth, and immortal ascension. Here, we bring you full-length English audiobooks of the best Wuxia and Xianxia stories, from young prodigies to ancient sect wars. Perfect for fans of Against the Gods, Martial World, and tales of demons and gods.